Hey guys, OG Albini here, bringing you guys our third episode of our, Crown Tundra New Mon kind of speculation series, where so far we have gone over both Galarian Zapdos, which was the first episode up on our channel, Galarian Moltres, which was the second episode that went up on Liv's channel a couple days ago, and today we're going to be going over Galarian Articuno. But obviously, like I said, I'm not alone. I'm joined by my co-host Liv. Do you want to say hi?
Hi. I don't know why we didn't start with Articuno because it's 1, 2, 3, but we did 2, 3, 1. Don't know why. Hi.
Counting's hard.
Yeah, counting's hard.
Really hard. I didn't even realize we did that. Counting's kind of hard. I can barely write my own name. I'm gonna count. But we're gonna be going over Articuno, which will definitely be a pretty cool one. Really cool mon. Definitely some potential in this one. But before we jump in, obviously go sub on Liv's. Go sub to Liv's channel. We obviously have episode 2 up over there. We'll be covering one of the Reggies up on her channel on the next episode next week. And definitely drop us up here. It's completely free. It helps me out, and it's you can always change your mind later. It's definitely a pretty easy task. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Liv, do you want to let the good people know what we know about Galarian Articuno thus far?
Well, of course. So Galarian Articuno, we don't know a ton about it, but we do know it has the very totally original typing of Psychic Flying. Such a good typing for mons like Lugia and Lugia. There's nothing else that you could really care about with that one, to be all honest.
Xatu slander. The Xatu slander.
Yeah, I mean, no, Xatu wasn't good until it's... Oh, you know what? I did forget one Pokemon. There is one other Pokemon with that typing, that's Woobat. Nothing else matters for that typing, though.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, so the only other thing that we know about this, besides the fact that it should have been an Ice type with its design, is the fact that it has competitive. So it's basically just a more scuffed version of Galarian Zapdos in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, not the best, unfortunately.
No.
I like the design a lot. It looks like Frozone.
Oh, it's very cool.
The Incredibles. Yeah.
This probably is the coolest... Well, actually, no, I take it back. It probably is the third coolest design, but it's still... They're all really, really cool designs, to be honest.
Yeah. From, like, a Pokemon fan standpoint, and less so, like, the Draft League player standpoint, I think these things are all phenomenal. I love them all.
100%.
I think they look great. There's not a wing leak in them. I think Zapdos is the coolest, then Moltres, then Articuno, which is probably why we did this. That and the counting thing. But this thing will definitely be really, really solid. Hopefully pretty solid nonetheless, and hopefully at least better than regular Articuno, which isn't the best one, but we'll see. We'll see. With that being said, though, I think we can jump right in and talk about some notable moves that this thing could potentially get. Going into this, I'm going to be going over some offensive moves. Liv will be going over some potential status and utility type roles and stuff like that. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. So first off, we do know its signature move. Its signature move is going to be a psychic type move called Freezing Glare, which is a psychic type special move that has a chance to freeze. Now, I think that this Pokemon is going to be pretty mediocre dependent on this move. Now, I don't think this is going to happen, but a lot of people are, chattering and thinking, oh man, if this thing has a Scald, but with Freeze, we got to ban it. And yeah, if you have a 30% chance to freeze something on a no drawback, base, 70, 80 stab move,
yeah,
that's ridiculously spammable. And Freeze is such an unbalanced garbage mechanic. At the very least, if it's that bad, you will see it complex banned if it's in your league at all. And that doesn't mean it's a good Pokemon. It just means that it has a really, really broken move. If that makes any sense. It's kind of like
Dracovish.
Yeah, it's like Dracovish, but even more extreme.
I think Fish's Friend is a lot dumber, but I think it's purely just the fact that 30% freeze is still a 70% chance to not freeze.
You can't play around it.
And
you can't play around
Fish's Friend, at least, unlike that, is always, if you're switching around, dumb. So I think this is like it would be like the next step below, though, compared to those, for sure. Yeah,
so I think that would be absolutely ridiculous. More so, I think I lean on the side of it getting like an Ice Beam or a Blizzard type chance, like 10 to 20%. 20% would still be really good. It'd make it a really spammable move. You can just freeze things with your Psychic Stab. That's really, really cool. Obviously, Dark types are still an issue, but those, potential Steel types that want to pivot in on your Psychic moves because they resist your dual stabs, freezing them puts you in a really good spot. It really does give you some pretty good positioning, unless your opponent, gets that 10% on the first turn or something like that. So I think that's, potentially really scary, but we'll see how that ends up going. Other moves, I think it'll get Psychic and Psyshock. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Being a Psychic type, getting access to both those. Psyshock is, really cool. to, hit those more specially defensive walls on the physically defensive side, especially with, like, potential Calm Mind or Nash Squad variants. If you're playing a Blissey or Chansey, you're definitely going to want Side Shock. I guess the thing getting Hurricane and Air Slash, again, based on that flying typing, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. All of these Pokemon thus far, we've kind of, like, said, like, they're going to get these moves because they're birds, and birds get these moves, as well as their, former versions got them as well. I think this thing will definitely get Ice-type coverage. Ice Beam, Blizzard, Freeze Dry, it'll still keep that roots, and it still has that, like, that freezing type atmosphere to it. So I think it'll definitely get Ice coverage. And Ice is, again, a pretty spammable typing. The only thing so far with this thing in the coverage moves we've listed is going to be Bulky Steels. Bulky Steels pretty much wall this thing at this point, actually. Like, really, really wall this thing. But it's a potential option I saw for this thing, because I was thinking, well, we see it getting any coverage to hit those things. I don't see it getting a fire move. I'd be very surprised if this thing got Heat Wave or Flamethrower or something. I don't really see it getting Earth Power either, but something I thought potentially getting is Aura Sphere. I've noticed a lot of Psychic types, especially this gen, did get access to Aura Sphere. You have things like Zam that got it. A bunch of different mons like that. So, did Zam get Aura Sphere? Zam did not get Aura Sphere. Zam has Focus Blast. But regardless,
it still has coverage.
Yeah, so a lot of Psychic types are getting that special fighting coverage, and I think if this thing got Aura Sphere, it would make it a lot better, especially in conjunction with some other coverage moves that it may get, and some, other utility moves, like, Calm Mind, things like that, that I might get as well. I think that could definitely be really, really clutch for this thing. But without it, it's going to be really tough for it to deal with those kinds of things. But do you want to talk about the utility status type stuff?
Yeah, of course. So I'll first mention that the Aura Sphere is a Pike Dream of Zap. If Articuno got walled by every type under the sun, this is going to get walled by every type under the sun. Now, in terms of the status options, these do lean pretty similarly to our other options. But I do think, though, that there are a lot of similar options compared to the other birds that could be options for status. First one being Heal Belt. This is the one that exclusively Articuno got, if I'm not mistaken, and I think it would make sense to keep this because all the birds had like some sort of really cool status to them, and I think that this would probably be one that Galarian Articuno would get. Another one being Screens, but I don't think they're gonna cuck Articuno this time by only giving it one screen. They're gonna do it justice to give it both. It's a Psychic type now; it deserves both screens. Otherwise, just at least give it Light Screen and just be really funny and don't give it Reflect this time. I think that'd be really ironic. Other things like the Roost, Whirlwind, Tailwinds, Defogs are all pretty obvious. I think this Safeguard as well is another really obvious one. I think it's similar to Heal Bell. I think it'll transfer over. And then the other things would be Calm Mind and Cosmic Power. I think that it's either going to get both of them or none of them personally, because they could easily just ditch the setup on all the birds like they did at first, and I would totally get that. But I think if they were to give it one of these moves, they're probably just going to give it both because they're so easily accessible now. So I think that it's either both or none for the Calm Mind and Cosmic Power personally. So yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see it, especially with every Psychic type on the sun getting Cosmic Power this gen, and everything really that has that kind of like special attack and presence getting those moves. I could definitely see that, which would be definitely really solid with Galarian Articuno. Though I do think this is going to be a lot like regular Articuno, where it's just kind of the awkward middle child that just doesn't get enough coverage or just enough useful moves on it, where regular Moltres and regular Zapdos have great move pools and things like that, and great ways to abuse it. But with Articuno's lackluster typing and things like that, it just didn't have enough. And this one, it's kind of the same bet. Dark Flying and Fighting Flying are so much better offensively, especially if they want to go a more offensive route with these things.
But for sure.
Speaking of said typings and things like that, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about the stats that this thing might get. So for the first one we have one that I came up with, which is going to be a little bit more of an offensive Articuno. Boosting it up to 100 speed, which would be really nice for this thing in order to, outspeed those 95s and lower and things like that. The rare 97, like the Urshifus and things like that would also well. Letting it really outspeed and kill those, giving it more of a reliable speed tier as a Scarfer, being a little bit stronger and being able to, abuse that, what do you call it, a little bit easier, the competitive ability that it has at the point. The special attack boost, I basically just swapped the special attack, I believe. Yeah, I just swapped the special attack and the special defense to make it a little bit faster, a little bit stronger. Like that wall breaking presence, because this thing does look a little bit more, aggressive, opposed to as dignified and, bulky and annoying as Articuno was before. We took a little bit out of the bulk, a little bit out of the attack, and kind of went with, that route, which I definitely think they could do with this thing. But there's definitely other options and a more bulkier route. Did you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, of course. So I personally think that Articuno will probably go for the more bulkier route, stat-wise personally. Mostly just because of the fact that if we look at regular Articuno, it already has a fairly defensive-ish stat line with 90, 85, 100, 95, 125, 85. Now, I personally think that they're not going to do another stat swap on this. And in all honesty, I think that while it could definitely happen, the stat swaps are kind of lazy predictions, so I wanted to go with a bit more of a not lazy idea. So I went with a 90 HP, 80 attack, 115 defense, 100 special attack, 125 speed def, and 70 speed. 125 speed def, I figured it honestly made sense on regular Articuno anyway, and being a psychic type, it's probably going to lean a bit more speed def. But the 115 Fizz Def is a nice buff, taking 5 out of attack, taking 5 out of speed, 5 out of special attack, and then 15 out of speed. This gives it to 5 more attack, and then 15 more Fizz Def. I figured that just having it like this, well actually never mind, I didn't take any out of attack into special attack. I don't know what you know what? I took it 5 out of attack and moved into special attack. It's 100. Okay, sorry, I can't English. But having 100 special attack is still really good for a competitive mon, especially with bulk of 190, 115, 125. To put it in perspective, that would be Suicune's Fizz Def with slightly less HP, but slightly more speed def as well, and then it would have slightly more special attack. So if this was to have a good hidden ability that was on the more defensive end, this could actually be a really solid stat line for a potentially tier 3 Pokemon. I don't think the typing's going to merit it being tier 2 or tier 1 by any stretch. It would need a ridiculously good move pool with that typing to be a tier 2 or tier 1. Maybe like a low tier 2 in Wi-Fi leagues, but in that dex, it's dreaming if it thinks it could ever reach that without a god tier move pool. But I do think that this could at least lead it to be a viable Pokemon for sure. The Psychic Flying typing's a bit unless your name is Lugia, but I do think it could still have some merit. Especially with Boots' gen, it could have something going for it for sure as a nice bulky defog mon with some nice slow pivot as well with the base 70 speed. I thought that was really cool with the sort of bulk because it could defog. And honestly, if you're running a minus speed nature, you can slow pivot out pretty freely, and that'll be really nice just to make sure you can get hazards out of the way. So yeah, thought this could be a cool stat line for it.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see it lean the more bulky side, and speaking about the bulk and stuff like that, like you said, if it gets a good hidden ability that really, tailors towards that, it could be great. And one that we have mentioned here is going to be Magikarp, and I think that would be like best case scenario for this thing. Having a mon like this that doesn't have to worry about rocks, which means it doesn't have to run boots, which means it can run lefties, it can run Colbur, it can run a bunch of different potential items to be a general nuisance. Magikarp is such a good ability, and being able to splash down on a mon with, potentially some really, really great bulk and, good pivoting options and probably U-turn and, just being a general nuisance. I think that could be absolutely amazing, especially on Fat Calm Mind Berries, especially on Cosmic Power variants, if it ends up getting that as well. With things like Stored Power and things like that. Could be super, super nasty for this thing. I actually think Magikarp would be like probably best case scenario. This is one that, unlike Galarian Zapdos and Moltres, I didn't look at it and I was like, this hidden ability. This was definitely really hard for me to come up with. I didn't even come up with most of these, actually. One came to my mind as we were recording, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's not on the thing. These were totally both Liv's ideas, but I think Magikarp is like probably the best case scenario and one of the best fits for this thing. For sure.
I agree. I would say I came up with the Magikarp idea. I also pitched Owen a couple others, such as Magic Bounce and Telepathy, similar to the Psychic again. The other one, also Regen, but we figured that Regen might be a bit too much depending on the stat line. Especially with a slow pivot set, that would be so gross. But the one that we ultimately settled on for the other option was Frisk. And I figured that Frisk could actually fit a mon like this pretty well because of obviously the fact that it looks like it has lenses. So obviously seeing the opponent's item kind of made sense there. Also, it being a Psychic type, there are definitely a few Psychic types with Frisk, or even just a few bulkier mons with Frisk in general. If we were to look at what gets Frisk, it would be stuff such as Orbeetle. There's stuff like Gothitelle gets Frisk. There's other mons like Pumpkaboo, just other fat mons. Not a ton of Psychic types, but to be fair, compared to the pool, it's really just Psychic and Ghost. So I figured that this kind of made sense on potential Galarian Articuno, at least for one of the vague options. But Owen, if you want to go into the one that you thought of as we were mid-recording, actually, I don't know if you heard us typing, but Owen actually came up with it because of that, and it fits really well, actually. Honestly, it fits probably better than any of my ideas that I came up with, of being completely honest, but Magikarp's still my ideal.
I'm so mad that I didn't think of this one before because it makes so much sense. Look at his goggles. Look at his like Frozone type visor. This thing could totally get tinted lens, and I think that would actually make the offensive stat line that I mentioned a little bit earlier a lot better. In all honesty, with the psychic flying typing, flying being pretty spammable, especially with tinted lens, that could be really, really, really annoying to deal with. Your steel types are coming in, switching in, taking that freezing glare. And potentially getting frozen while it's tinted lens boosted and throwing off big hits with competitive and potentially being calm mind. I think tinted lens could make a more offensive variant of this Galarian Articuno really, really nice. And when I look at these Pokemon, all of them I get a more offensive vibe from them as opposed to the bulky annoying beasts that the Cantonian versions are. So I think that what do you call it? Even if it doesn't get Aura Sphere, which is definitely a stretch. I don't think it'll get Aura Sphere. I'm holding out hope that it can at least touch steel types darks a little bit better. But even if it doesn't, if it has that tinted lens option, it makes your stabs that much more spammable and just clicking buttons and kind of chipping things down for yourself to come back in later. Maybe even Specs variants could pop off and do a little bit better if you are more offensive and you have that tinted lens option. So I think that could be like super clean.
Yeah, I will say, as I mentioned earlier, this would need a pretty ridiculous stat line or like just something ridiculous about it to really get it into the tier 2, tier 1 range. I will say that tinted lens could actually possibly do that depending on the right stat line. I don't think there's a lot of things. The only other thing that I think could really do that would be like a regen hidden ability. But otherwise, I don't have a lot of faith in this mon being a really upper mon. However, tinted lens could potentially push that over the edge because psychic flying with tinted lens is so gross. We think of Venomoth, for example, with poison bug with tinted lens, and that's already a really, really obnoxious like low tier pick, like tier 4 range. Think about that with a mon that has a psychic flying typing. That would be vile. Ugh.
That plus the legendary Pokemon stat line based at total and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be...
Because if we think of Venomoth as well with tinted lens, Venomoth at the very least, same as like Butterfree, they have garbage stat lines. Venomoth has like around 400-ish, Butterfree's 395, the best one being like Sigilif at 490, and that's another psychic flying. Like, these aren't good stat lines by any means. I think actually, yeah, Mega has a slightly better stat line. I think it's like 510 or something. But none of them have like a legendary Pokemon stat line.
That's bug flying, and those air slashes and bug buzzes are annoying. Like steel types don't switch in. If you're Specs, they don't switch in.
Exactly. It takes so much because it has a really good special attack stat and a decent speed tier too. So something like this, if it had tinted lens, would be so vile. Oh my god, I would hate playing that. That would actually be obnoxious.
Yeah, for sure. But that's essentially all we really have about Galarian Articuno. Like Liv said, I think this Pokemon definitely has promise of being like a good lower end value pick. I don't think it's gonna be anything broken. I think the other two, Galarian Zapdos, if they give it the right things, definitely could be a tier 1 Pokemon. I lean tier 2 when you look at Galarian Moltres. Maybe tier 1 if they give it some really bonkers, crazy stuff. But definitely more tier 2 and if they really shafted tier 3 type Pokemon. Galarian Articuno, it's probably going to be chilling in the tier 4, maybe low end tier 3 type range and your Wi-Fi settings. But there's nothing wrong with that. I've gotten amazing value out of Pokemon like this, plenty of times in the past. Even a Pokemon with this typing as a good tier 4 in Xatu. I love Xatu. I've had so much fun using that thing. I have one of my favorite games ever. I brought Spec Xatu versus someone that swept. There's definitely some cool stuff you could do with those, and be a general nuisance. And flying types are just overall so much better this gen boots. You could definitely get great value out of this thing, even if it's not your broken tier 1, tier 2 type mon. The mon you build around. That definitely doesn't make it bad. And having a 4 times fighting resistance definitely was really, really nice.
That's huge this gen, especially if it happened to get or even if it ended up being like a tier 5 mon. There's obviously still really good psychic flyings in tier 5, such as a Woobat, that could honestly be giving this a run for its money, but it could still definitely probably do a fairly good job against them.
All right, that's a perfect way to end it off. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Go ahead and hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Drop a sub if you haven't done so as well. And definitely go check out Liv's channel. If you haven't watched the Galarian Moltres episode, it'll be up over there already. And then the next episode will also be up over there, whichever Reggie we decide to do first on her channel. And any closing words?
Woobat gang.
All right, let's end this immediately. All right, thanks guys. Later.